lovelies, welcome back to my channel, Love and Learn with Lacey. Sorry it's been so long since my initial first upload. I'm going to try to have more content rolling in, but I'm not sure if there'll be a set increment of time that'll happen in. But anyway, today's topic that I would like to discuss is teachers, real and fiction, that have inspired me to become a teacher or to who inspire me to be a better teacher. Their styles or attributes about them that just help me relate to my students better, or that things I keep in mind in my day-to-day job. And I'm going to start off with one that might be a little bit surprising. I'm going to start off with the fiction. It's not somebody I know in real life, and I don't think it's based on a real teacher. And there is a movie that I absolutely adore. I am obsessed with this movie. It's called American History X, and I know you're thinking, whoa, this is a children's teacher's learning channel, but if you've seen the movie, you'd understand why I think you'd be surprised. It's a very dark movie with a lot of dark themes, but one of the biggest things that I pulled from it was the relationship between teachers and students. There's a lot of other themes between father, son, brother to brother, mother, father. It's a very big on relationships. I feel like that's a huge thing in the movie, which I might end up doing a whole video on that movie, maybe some movie reviews regarding educators, I don't know. But back to the character that I wanted to talk about, which was Dr. Bob Sweeney. Now, Dr. Bob Sweeney, when you see him enter into the movie, he's actually the principal. He's not just the teacher, but he was a English teacher at one point in the plot line, but he has a very intense impact on the lives of both the older brother and the younger brother in the story, and he approaches the issues and the struggles that they're having internally. He approaches that with very much fair and understanding. You know, as he walks into that situation, there's another character that's supposed to be sort of a parallel to him that doesn't have that ability to see the other side and is easily offended and can't take his own personal biases out of the equation to see what these boys really need, and or doesn't have the right tools to do so. But that's why I loved the Bob Sweeney character, because he enters into it in so much of a I've been on this side of the glass type of mentality. And I know that in early childhood, which is the realm that I am in, you're not going to have to combat the issues that you necessarily will find in this movie, but you will have to come to the table with that same perspective for your students. You have to understand that they're not necessarily coming out of the same living situations that you came out of, financial situations, cultural backgrounds. They're going to have building blocks that they've already started to connect before they reached you. And I know with the early learning classroom, you kind of even get like a head start in that as well, but they're still coming from their smaller community, which was their family life. So I feel like having a deep understanding and not like trying to challenge them so much in trying to get them to change their views, but sort of like trying to take in what they're trying to tell you and then what you can give them, I guess, which I know, again, in an early childhood classroom, it's more of just accepting where they're coming from and their family, where their families are coming from, and kind of being a team player in that aspect. So that character, I don't know, I really took that character to heart. So Dr. Bob Sweeney is the first one on my list, and not because more or less, this isn't in any particular order of who I viewed as more inspiring is just who came to mind first. Now the next one on my list, I'm going to sound like a kiss ass because I wrote a paper for a scholarship involving this teacher. But again, I like to give credit where credit is due because I remember all my teachers, but not everybody does. And I think for most people, the teachers that you remember are the ones that affected you the most. Maybe not academically, but just social emotionally. Like this particular teacher, I'm just going to call her Mrs. L because I don't know if she wants her name all over the internet. But she was 4th, 5th grade teacher of mine. And I think the biggest thing that I gained from her, other than I think she had, from what I remember, she had some pretty interesting lesson plans, things like that, activities for us to do hands-on that we were learning. But the biggest thing for me was like when we would be outside or something, recess, we could sit and have conversations with her like we were people and not just the kids in her classroom. And I think that that's an important thing to do, is to treat your kids like people and not just like your job. I work with very little children, and it's very easy to get in this like mode of like, okay, we got to do diapers, then we got to do this, then we have to do this, and just it's very easy to think of your day in the confines of your routine, and that they are just sort of there to fulfill that. And you have to sort of remember that these are people that you're shaping, and these are people that everything about their day is going to be put into their little databases up there. So I think what she taught me the most was that you need to treat them as people and not as a job, and not that all my other teachers did. I think it just stood out with that particular teacher. So Mrs. L, thank you. And I'm not trying to be kiss ass. The next one on my list was another real teacher I had. This was high school, and I know I'm not providing a lot of early learning experiences, but again, if you're an early learning teacher, you have to accept the fact that you're probably not going to be remembered. At least not by anybody younger than the 3s. I remember my preschool teacher, but I have a crazy good memory, and that's not everybody. But the next person on my list was a high school teacher of mine, Mr. Bloom. I probably shouldn't have. I meant to just say Mr. B, but I'm sure he won't mind. Mr. B was my English lit teacher where I went to high school, and he, I think, stood out, number one, because he was younger than a lot of the teachers. I mean, he was in the realm of like 30s, almost 40 at the time. He was younger, but I think he also had a fresh outlook on how to keep the lessons interesting, taking interests and styles of like what the kids were good at and what they were into, and incorporating that into how he was going to teach the lesson. Like, we had a lot of really cool projects. We did one where we had to act out, a scene from Macbeth, which I know is a kind of common thing, but you got to pick how you interpreted the thing, and there was like a lot of Beowulf lesson. There was a lesson plan where we got to pick out, an excerpt from Beowulf and like compare it to a song that we know or something, a lot of things like that, where we were relating it to our things that were familiar to us and relatable. And one thing that always sticks in my mind, like when I was talking about the little kids and their databases, the wording that I wanted to use, but I wanted to lead into this particular teacher, he always talks about jars of experience. And that's something that's always stayed with me since I heard that. Like, anything you do in your life, any life experience you have, you're going to put that in a jar and you're going to put that on the shelf. And for future references, if, like, say you're doing something else in your life, you're going to be able to have all these different ingredients on that shelf that you're going to be able to take down and use. And as teachers, you're kind of providing them with extra ingredients. You're trying to add to those jars of experience. So, sorry, I didn't mean to use your name, but I'll try not to do that in the future for anybody else. But yeah, that's something that's always stuck with me. Plus, he was really funny. I think when you can have a really nice sense of humor about your job, I think it makes everybody's time, go much quicker and more fun. I know that it was my 7th hour senior year, and it was one of my favorite classes during the day, and not just because it was the last one during the day. The next one, everybody knows, I hope, who Mr. Feeney is. I put him on the list because number one, I felt like I needed a few more fiction ones, but also because for somebody who's acting, he acts this very true educator. Like, I don't know if I'm commenting on that right, but he puts into the character. I feel like he expresses such a passion for the kids to be learning. Like, that sounds so cheesy, but what I mean by that is that you can see the character get this, like, absolute just glow over when, like, Corey or, whenever they're learning their little lesson about life, or even in the classroom, you see that passion there and the drive behind it. And I know it's just a fictional character, but that's kind of why it makes the character so amazing, and the actor, because it's, as a real teacher, you can't fake that. Like, you can't fake the passion. It's just something that if it's there, it's not. I mean, if it's there, it's there. If it's not, it's not. So, I'm always really just thrown back about how well he acts that. I mean, because I'm not sure if he was ever truly an educator, but, like, if he wasn't, he's a brilliant actor, because that's something really hard to fake, in my opinion. Sounds a bit silly, but now the next two, I'm going to group these two together because they come from the same institution. It was the institution I earned my bachelor's at. They were Professor O, and I'm going to say Christy M. There's two Christy M's, but the one of them was a professor. Professor O, and I even if I did want to say her name, I couldn't, because that's what everybody calls her, Professor O. She was a really tough lady, very sweet, very tough, and the thing that I got from her was a very, very deep appreciation for children's lit. That's the class that she taught, was children's lit. And I don't know if if anybody watching this knows me, I'm big on literacy. I'm big on reading. I love to read, and I'll buy you a book for Christmas, even though I know you don't like to read, because I'm trying to get you to read, because I know the importance of it. I buy it for baby showers and things like that, because I know there's an insane importance in it. But since going to school, and taking that particular class with Dr. O, I not only learned, it's important because it broadens your ideas and things like that, but you get so much language, acquisition out of it. It helps so many kids that, need that in their lives. It can open interests, that the kids may not have known that they had, or never would have developed if they didn't read a book about it. I appreciate the literature itself, the concepts, that there's different kinds of books. There's concept books, and there's, can't think of any of the other ones off the top of my head, but there's the artwork involved, and how very intentional it is, the styles they use or the materials they use to make the illustrations, because sometimes they use textiles, sometimes it's paints, sometimes it's printed, sometimes it's CGI. So it's very intentional, the language. So it's like I have a very deep appreciation for children's lit in itself. And so I try to promote it as often as I can. And I'm going to use this as a little insert to try to promote. I tried to do a little charity this summer. It didn't go so well because it was a very hot day and it was not timed well because it was nap time. But if anybody would be interested in trying to get together another charity where I try to collect books for some local shelters, or not shelters, but charities in which people can come by and get free items for, if you're homeless or down on your luck or something. Kids need coats and things like that. There's a couple of charities where they can come in and they can basically buy for free, it's just inventory basically, books, and I wanted to donate a few of them to there because, I feel like, you can get books from school, but they're not yours, and if some kid has to hop from house to house, they're getting evicted all the time, I think kids need their own reading materials, and I know my reading materials were very dear to me. Like, it was very important that I took care of my books as a kid. I was a nerd. But yeah, so if you are interested at all and you're in my area, on my Facebook, just comment to me about it. I have a Facebook page called Bookworms with Big Hearts, so if you'd like to be involved with that at all, maybe we can think of some different things to do, and it doesn't have to be just books, but mainly literacy charities was what I was interested in. So, like I said, I think Professor O had a lot to do with my continuing passion for that subject. So that's Professor O. And Christy M. Not anything like super specifically, it's just she came to mind when I thought of this list because she was always super supportive. She was a member of the School of Ed staff where I was at, and she was a professor. I can't honestly remember which class. It was the very first class that we took in our in our journey, in our cohort, but I can't recall what it was. But I do remember that she was just very supportive, but she had very high expectations. She had very high standards, but she was willing to work with you, try to figure out what your strengths were, and help you through it. I know she was very supportive with me, and she was always had a smile. Very, very supportive staff there. She actually now, I think, runs the department, if I'm correct. I'm not sure about that. But, so yeah, the Millikan, and actually I would have to say most of the Millikan staff were phenomenal in helping me, because I know I had more than a couple of meltdowns and, was a little bit lost there for a while in what I was hoping to do, and I think they really helped in trying to make you the best teacher that you could be, the best educator, or whatever it was what you were trying to do. So the next fiction teacher that I wanted to put on the list was actually also a high school teacher. I know I don't have a lot of early ed ones on here, but I just feel like these are the ones that I learned sort of lessons from. The teacher from Freedom Writers, which I believe her name was Erin Gorel. She actually, I shouldn't say fiction, because she is a real person. She is a real educator. I haven't actually done a lot of research on her as a real person. I've just seen the movie and I've read the real Freedom Writers book. But she was this kind of a rock star. Like, it kind of sucked for her because her life was her romantic life was kind of falling apart as she was working really hard because she cared so much about her students. And I think I put her on the list just because I kind of tend to do that. I kind of throw my whole self into my work, You know, I make games on the weekends, or you know, I'm writing my lesson plans a lot of times at home on my free time. You know, because I'm in my own zone, and I feel a little less rushed, I guess. I don't know. I just enjoy doing that, and I feel like all of my time I'm a teacher. I'm not just a teacher when I walk into my classroom. So, which it's never negatively impacted my life, I don't feel like, but it's always been kind of a positive for me. But I think I like that character. That's something that maybe I don't think I do it because of her, but it's just something that I've noticed that that I have in common with that character, and that I hope that I'm always like that. I love throwing myself into work. I love projects. I think I always have to have a project because I think I'm like self-diagnosed like ADHD, and I need something to constantly be focusing on, and why not focus on your kids? So when I don't have any of my own, so you know, I have a little more time than most. You know, well, everybody's busy. I'm busy too, but I enjoy doing it on my time. I would also, I'm going to group these next three together. They're the last three that I'll talk about today. It's from my old job, and one of them was not actually, I never actually got to see her sort of in the role of teacher. We'll just call her, well, I can say her first name, Debbie. Debbie was a lovely lady. She was very mild-mannered, very kind of always had that really sweet disposition and voice, and but she'd been doing this job for 30 years, I think. You know, she'd been in daycare, and she'd been in the early childhood field for a very long time, so she knew her shit. But she was very kind-hearted, and what most of the connection that I had with her was when you'd turn in your lesson plans, she would give you a lot of advice or corrections, like maybe this isn't the best for your age group, or try doing this instead, or oh, this is awesome, maybe you want to also try this. You know, she was a great source of ideas and advice. So I always kind of looked up to her. I mean, I appreciated the presence and the work of my other directors and things, but I got a lot from Debbie, and that I really appreciated, and I kept some of the notes that she would write, like on my lesson plans. I've kept them and just sort of look back at them sometimes and just keep some of those things in mind. So yeah, and then also, these two, this is going to sound a little silly because they're not too far off from my age. They're very, they haven't been doing this forever, at all. They were kind of new around the same time I was, but, I have to say and I also consider them my friends, so I'm a little biased, but, Alicia and Katie are two of the teachers that I had at my other center that were absolutely fabulous at their jobs. They were amazing at designing their classrooms. They were amazing at, you know, implementing their lessons. They were amazing at, once they figured out the whole portfolio thing, which I'm still struggling with, they just seemed to have it all together, and they were always teachers that I was sort of kind of looking at and getting tips from, and you know, you're supposed to collaborate, and I just loved collaborating with them, or just, you know, seeing what their rooms were like, or what they were doing this week, because it was always something amazing. I think, like, I was always just sort of blown away with both of them, and that's not to be kiss ass again, because I know you guys, and if you guys are watching this, I'm kind of embarrassed, but, you know, I always really admired you guys. So yeah, and I said that those were the last two that I would discuss, And besides that, also just, their passion for their job. They always brought a lot of creativity to the job, and I think because they were younger, they also had, kind of that spice to add to it as well. But along with all of them, I, again, don't want to be a kiss ass, and I didn't really want to add this to the list, but I also have to say my current boss is kind of awesome just because she is kind of juggling, she's juggling director, she's also a lead teacher, so she's doing lesson plans, she sets up her, her room a certain way, she deals with parents on a day-to-day basis for the whole center, and she's also currently either full-time or part-time student, so she's just doing all these things, but she's doing it so well that if that were me, my head would have exploded by now, and I'm not sure if she feels like that, but she's doing a fabulous job, and I feel like giving credit where credit is due, because not many people are that good at balancing all those things, because she also has 2 kids, and I'm like, if I had kids, I don't know how I would ever do anything regarding my job, because I would just be so busy. But she does it, and she does it well, and I know many women do, and I am kind of in awe of any woman that can balance all of that and, have multiple responsibilities in one job. And, that's something I need to work on, is multitasking and things like that, because I'm a little scatterbrained at times. I'm very forgetful of, where I set things, so I'm trying to develop systems for things like that, and so I'm just thoroughly impressed with anyone who can do that many things and still keep their head on straight. So, not kissing ass, not asking for a raise, but thank you for the job that you do. And so I guess I'll leave you today with just the question of, is there any teachers, real or fiction, that have inspired you, who made you want to go into the field, who are that's why you're thinking about going to school to be a teacher, or it's why you took a job at a daycare, or if there's just a teacher that's ever inspired you to do anything, to make a choice in your life to do something, and I'd like to see those in the comments. I'd like to hear some stories, and maybe your stories can inspire other people. So thank you for listening, and I would also like to ask, because I do have a few ideas for future videos, but I would also maybe like some possible ideas, things you might want to see from a channel like this. Would you like to see how-to videos on making different games, for certain age groups? Would you like to see how to set up a classroom in a really unique way? Would you like a collaboration with other teachers on things like that? What kind of videos would you like to see on this channel? So thank you very much for watching, and I will see you guys on the flip side.